You're in the future. You mean the past? Exactly.
G'day everyone, Heba here from Collective Rising, and thanks again for being here. Today's podcast going to be around the topic of energy, manifest and unmanifest forms, deep dive into primal sound and light that make up the universe, and the various density level rays of manifestation and currents of energy that run our universal and energy matrix that we're a part of. Have you ever wondered if there is an order to the universe, or are we just here by chance? Today I'm going to unveil and unpack some concepts for you to do mainly with the masculine and feminine, or divine masculine, divine feminine principles. Also talk about how we are made up of these creative currents or creative energy currents, the electric and the magnetic, and how I think that we're existing in the prime creator God, in that framework of consciousness itself that we call God, or the supreme being, the creator, whatever name you'd like to give to it. It's the same energy that we are a part of, all of us are a part of. So there's a lot to explore in this podcast, and if you feel at any point that the information's too overwhelming, please take a step back and return maybe another time when you feel it's the right time for you. Okay, so I want to start by asking once again the question, do you think that the universe run by chance, or is there a divine order for things? Many nowadays, especially in the scientific community, would argue that everything in this universe is run by chance, pure chance. There was a big bang and here we are. I want to take a different stance to that. I want to say that the order of things in the universe and the construct of the universe is so extremely intelligent, it's unfathomable. And because, chance alone could not birth something of such magnitude, such beauty and perfection, even with the seemingly imperfect parts. There are just way too many synchronicities, events, and phenomenon that when you think about them deeply, there is no way they could be reduced to just chance. And, that chance is what scientists would label as the Big Bang. But like I said, I'm taking a different stance today, and hopefully you'll be here to the end and share your ideas and give me some feedback in the comments. Let's make this an energetic exchange of ideas, feedback, and theories. Maybe you've got a theory that I'd be interested in and vice versa. So let's stick around and see how this goes. Okay, so what I personally think is, like I said, there's too many synchronicities, and synchronicities are a part of our construct, our existence, because in every moment we are creating, we are co-creating, and synchronicities go hand in hand with co-creation. And since there's too many of them, I think that just to reduce existence to just chance is null and void. That's not a theory that I subscribe to, personally. Carl Gustav Jung said it best when he said that synchronicity is a meaningful coincidence of two or more events when something other than the probability of chance is involved. He's saying that synchronicity is actually a meaningful coincidence of two or more events where chance is not involved. So chance is not behind the synchronicities, rather meaningful events is what makes these synchronicities. And these events, how do they occur? Well, in my opinion, they occur from a direct manifestation of individual, so you as an individual, and also the collective mind or the collective consciousness that stems from that very point of stillness, or the very point of creation. We call it the void, and it comes forth. So from the void comes the first creation, put forward into action and into movement, creating that perpetual oscillation. That's a movement of light frequencies that create the world, and the manifest creation happens. So synchronicities themselves are wave carriers of these events that could not by chance happen, but by divine orchestration, in my opinion. Who's the creator? Who is God? And how did God manifest himself or itself? Well, God essentially is an eternal being of pure consciousness, beyond time, beyond space, and therefore beyond matter itself. So God exists unto itself, and what happens after that is a creation of that eternal being. God essentially created the three conscious eternal life forces that take on a form of standing scalar waves. That's how it happens. So creation becomes, we have God creator, the eternal, and from the creator, the void, and the void, if you like, started to make movements. There was an energetic encryption, and then that created sound, and then sound created movement, which became light. So then sound and light, the play between sound, primal light, and primal sound, created everything else in this manifest universe. So we have two different types. We have the unmanifest, which is the energy that's existing in potentiation, and we have the manifest energy that takes on a form. And I'll go into that more deeply in a minute. These living, conscious, eternal forces are also an extension of God. They're units of consciousness of God that were created. And, excuse me, all these units of consciousness are termed as Partiki units. Partiki units. So the Partiki units essentially make up the scalar wave grids that becomes matter in lower densities. So we're made of Partiki units, units of consciousness directly from God. So we are born in the image of the eternal creator. Now here where it begins to get a little complicated, but like I said, I feel there's an order to it, and you can appreciate the intelligence in the creation itself when you really understand the theory of creation and the steps that it takes, and the unfolding. It's just mind-blowing, really. So Partiki units, those extension of that carry the God particle, they carry the Manu force, which is the void. And I'll elaborate a lot on that later on throughout the podcast. But when it flashes on, that void, when it flashes on, it becomes a Partiki unit. And when it flashes off, it becomes a Particum unit. And so the Manu and the Mane, when they come together, the electric and the magnetic, or the masculine and feminine, come together, and that's translated to light and sound. Different names for different things, for the same things, because everything was created at the same time. So it wasn't like day 1, day 2, day 3, day 7, like the Bible says, not in a chronological order, because time doesn't exist on that level. It all was a simultaneous manifestation, but it was orderly. There was an order for things, and it wasn't just a big bang, because that means that a lot of things can go wrong, but it wasn't, because we can prove that there was an absolute perfection in that first creation. Now, what makes the movement happen? So in the highest realm of God, there is no movement. But when there was movement, which is the second step in creation, the movement it created waveforms, And waveforms are the basis of the templates that create the manifest creation. So templates are created. So these templates are called Kathara templates, and they're the ire, which is a feminine principle, and the mane, which is a masculine. They come together and become the manu, and that means that everything's returned to original point of creation, because everything returns to the void. So that's when we're going back into source. But when you're expanding out of source, the Partiki splits into two, feminine, masculine, or mane and ire. So when you put the masculine and feminine together in perfect balance and harmony, they transmute the duality and the polarity and the individuation, and they return to the void. So the void is that still point, that point of creation, that point of stillness that doesn't exist in a polarized state. In this energy matrix, we occupy everything. Everything is matter, seemingly so, but everything is built on the concept of Trinity, the three. Trinity, 1, 2, 3, not just two, because that's a dual existence. That throws us off because we always have to take one side. But in this time matrix, in this energy matrix that we're in, everything's built on a triad or a Trinity principle. And you can see the expressions of Trinity in various religions and doctrines, for example, Hinduism and Christianity. So I'm not sure about Judaism, but I know Christianity and Hinduism, there's always an expression of that divine Trinity expressed everywhere. Everything's based on the three. Okay, so when the mane is a positive force, or the masculine, expands out, it becomes an electrical particle, and when it contracts, it's a feminine magnetic, it becomes base magnetic, particum unit. Like I said, these particum and Partiki units come from the Partiki, and they form the grid works of all consciousness grid works that we have. It's also form the base templates that we're made of, because we follow a certain order, a template. It's called the Kathara template, and it's based 12 points. Manu is a void, and it's a combination of the two. Like I said, when the two come together in perfect harmony, that becomes a still point of creation. Science has explained that in a different way. They called it protons, neutrons, and electrons, and they say that each carries a certain electric or magnetic charge. I think they say magnetic, except the neutrons, but doesn't go all the way to explain the void and the original point of God consciousness. So they don't make that correlation. I think they're starting to find that out. But it's clearly an off-topic because it's hard to prove. So, yeah, I mean, you know, these things you just know. Like when I read something, I'll know if it's something that makes complete sense because I feel into it and I feel like it does or doesn't. It's an inner knowing, I guess. And sometimes that inner knowing is hard to prove. Okay, so I mean, I love science. Personally, I love science, and I think science has a lot to do with explaining why we're here and things that make up who we are, but they don't go too far. They don't go into spiritual science. So not sure why they keep that out, but yeah, I think it's to do with like finding things that are spiritual hard to prove, or is it done intentionally? Possibly. I'm not sure. But anyway, science, the purpose of science is to help us understand all these things and tie them all together. Before we became individuated humans, we decided to incarnate as a race to help other life forms bio-regenerate. And we came from, as indigos and humans, we came from the Kirashe and the Kundarai, which are the primal sound and primal light fields. we come here forgetting about the purpose, our purpose, why we're here. We remember who we are eventually, but it takes millions and billions of years of evolution to bring that memory back. And there's also has been a lot of drama that wiped our memories, especially genetic and biological memories, to an extent. And we're starting to remember now because now we have access to D12 energy that we didn't have access to for very, very long time. So we're starting to remember this information once again. And thanks to the Maharata texts and the freedom teachings, we're able to accelerate that process as well. So now let's dive a little deeper now to explain God energy a little bit more in depth. As we've established before, there's a divine trinity. There's life force, there's primal currents, and there's a manu, which is the void that split into two particles, the feminine and the masculine, electric, magnetic, or the mane and the ire. We're not talking about splitting and forming two people or two beings. For example, Adam and Eve, like we're being told, were the first two people on the planet that gave birth to the whole human race. It's not like that. It's a manifestation of energy, and it's split into two because it had to take on different, it had to be organized differently and expressed differently. So we're talking about manifestation of energy and currents of energy, and that's the principle of creation. It's the masculine became the light, and the ire, the feminine, is the primal sound. And they're forms of consciousness that they were expressions of God directly, come into manifestation, first in pure forms, and then they took on forms of what we perceive as matter here. That's why we're created, because God needed to know itself. God needed help, not as in God can't do it, but God needed help to know itself and know its potential. And therefore it created the void from which the splitting started to occur, the expansion and contraction, the fission, fusion, and then you can say that we're always living in that perpetual existence with God. We're never cut off, although on this level it may appear that we are. In actual fact, we're not. We're always a part of that organization. We just forget. Now, these expressions and units of consciousness are not separate. They're always interlinked in a specific way, and they're always and perpetually moving through different levels of our anatomy in this manifest creation. So we have Partiki, Particum units, and Partiki, Particum, Partikai units. We have the Trinity on this dimensional level, and we have it on the highest dimensional level. And it's always running our anatomy. It doesn't matter what level. So we have God consciousness with us in every dimension that we're existing on. Whether we're bad people or good people, we have God consciousness. The Trinity is always existing within. These units of consciousness are the fabric of the unified field, the manu, and they are what makes the scalar waves to form templates upon which all forms of existent matter are created upon. So they are the fabric of the unified field and the substance of the scalar waves that form the template. These, like I said, are the Kathara templates. They're 12 points. They manifest in density level 1, which you can see as objects and people, trees, mountains, rocks, and all that sort of thing. They exist in potentiation as well, because it's a scalar wave that hasn't manifested in form in the highest dimensions, and in between as well, all the dimensions in between. So in etheric form and pre-matter liquid light, it's all based on the Kathara 12 base template. It's a living expression of God. God identity itself, or God force, is eternal, and It is known as the Manu, or the void. Its first expression is a Manu, because it's depolarized and God's depolarized. God doesn't take sides. God doesn't favor this or this. But, you know, there's another word for depolarized. It's the word we use in Keylontic science and freedom teachings. It's Omni. Omni means everyone, all included. So God is omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient, because it is a force that exists beyond depolarization and polarization. It exists unto itself, and it's omni. It includes everybody. Everyone's living in the mind, in the heart of God itself. Now, the Trinity that I was talking about, if we look at the Manu force, or the void, we can see that, for example, Christianity talks about Holy Spirit. I see the void being the Holy Spirit that they talk about, or the Great Spirit referred to in the Bible. And within the unified Manu expression of God emerges simultaneously smaller units of consciousness, divine masculine, divine feminine. So the three together are expression of God, the life force. They create the divine trinity of the cosmic order, or the cosmic creation. Those who do not want to be a part of this original cosmic structure of eternal life, they actually did something that amazes me, really. It's funny in a way, but not really funny, because it's too sad, I guess. But laugh about it now, because it's incomprehensible, the extent to which they took it in order to create their own universe and their own God. So it's like a genius level orchestration of something like that. They orchestrated something. We're talking about the negative ones that don't want to be a part of God order. What they've done is they created the beast machine, or the Metatronic technology, so they can be separated from the God consciousness, from the void. They took it upon themselves to create a dual universe that consists of masculine and feminine, although I wouldn't call it the holy masculine, holy feminine, because everything's in reverse. So instead of that current expanding out, it just recycles onto itself, but it's masculine and feminine. And they have their own God, of course. So they have these people that are false gods that they put up there that demand you to worship them. Otherwise, you're in trouble. So they didn't want to be part of the cosmic structure of eternal life. They want to create their own structure, their own shields. They want to occupy the whole universe. And they want to be the true masters of the universe. So they created the apparatus beast that became the new God and the new world order. Of course, that fired back on them, because anything that goes against the natural order of things has a finite. It's finite. It's limited. It fired back on them because they created an electrostatic system, which means a system that's, you know, electric, not electromagnetic. So it's only electric and it's static. So it's in recycling its own energy. In essence, it blocks their ability to harmonize magnetic and electric forces and have them in the right proportions to create balance. So they created their own version of that, which is just electrostatic energy. They created the electrostatic system instead, keeps recycling the energy back and forth into itself. It's fixed and it's functioning in a way that doesn't recycle the energy, primal energy, I should say, back and forth into God. Another name for this system, or this entrapment, is the net. The net is a reverse 4D energy that's tethered to the 5G networks and all the radiation and everything else. It sucks energy into the phantom matrix, specifically the Wizard X system. That's why they feed off us being on the internet, because we're feeding the phantom. Now, we're all doing it, obviously. We're doing it for good reasons, I hope. But, you know, we're mindful of how much we're giving in. When we're unconscious, that's a problem. We're giving too much and they feed off that energy, feed it into their phantom matrix because they need something to survive on. And so, especially the indigos, because they hold the higher templating, which they've cut themselves off. They had potential. They were all coming from the primal light and sound fields, but they've cut that potential. They cut off from that potential because they were too arrogant and too, they wanted power more than anything else. So they reduced themselves to like a base 2. And even the 2 was taken out, DNA strand 2, which is to do with the emotional body. So you find that these entities, specific races, lack the emotional intelligence because they cut themselves off that as well. Now, I will be delving deep into the mechanics, going back to the Trinity and all that. Now, I want to say also regarding the Trinity is that we have the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. I think, and I feel like our bodies organically know that, like when you go off balance and you go into one extreme, say you go into the masculine or feminine too much, you become very depolarized. You can actually sense it. It starts to manifest as separateness. And, you know, there's all those agendas, the warring agendas between the genders of the masculine and feminine, the gynocracy, you know, the masculine, patriarchy, and all these, they're wars of consciousness. They're to take us away from going back into the void and finding the harmony and, the perfect harmony and the perfect balance that we come from originally. So finding our way back home, that's all to take us away from that. And on top of that, they also term us as insignificant. So they give us names like, you know, the insignificant or your nothingness. And, you know, like in Buddhism, for example, you're nothing. You know, the concept of nothing, everything's nothing, you're nothing. You know, like there's no honor to our beingness, and we're amazing. We're God itself, and we're here in this matter form. Just because we're in matter form, it doesn't mean that we're less than holy, but they give us these names to make us feel bad about ourselves and lock us into the negative emotional body. We're born apparently as sinful children. Okay, we're not small, we're not useless, we're not insignificant because the Creator doesn't see us as insignificant, as lesser than Him. We're just extensions of Him or it, and we're not even separated. God doesn't see us as separate from it. We're not separate from the God seed, Adam, that exists in perpetuality within ourselves. Because of that constant exchange, because if God sees Himself better or above, He would have cut Himself off us, but He didn't. So we just forgot that we're a part of it, a part of God. So we're always feeding off God, not in a negative way, not like we take. We're actually recycling through fission and fusion, expansion and contraction. There's a constant backflow of energy from and to God consciousness. Now, how to find that or return to that original template that we have? So fortunately, we have the freedom teachings and Keylontic science. There are vibrational sound tones to bring us to balance. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the vibrational sound tones. This is where it gets a little complicated, but most of you would relate to it because we know them in different names like chi and prana. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that now. Most of us have heard the terms chi and prana, although prana and chi are often referred to being the same thing, but they're not. Because they exist on different dimensional levels. So I'm going to elaborate on that and on various sonic vibrations, which, like I said, sonic vibrations are currency rays, but energy carriers and energy rays, they carry different charge depending on the type and form of the grid and what dimension we're existing on. So people get sick, and when they get sick, that's an indication that the Kathara template energy rays that run through the Kathara template might be blocked or running in reverse or partially running. And when they're not in balance, it demands that we actually look within the body and see where we need to heal, which we have to go back to the Kathara template of bioregenerating our DNA, bringing ourselves back to balance using those audible sound vibrations and the right frequencies of light, which a lot out there, a lot of technology has been created that's termed healing technology, light frequencies and sound vibrations that heal your body. But most of them, I'd say 95%, are actually inverted. Sorry about the construction noise out there. Most of it is inverted and intentionally so, in order, again, you know the story by now, because they just don't want us going back, because then no one's left and no one's left to feed off. So basically, sound vibrations and light frequencies, currents, come all the way from the top level of the energy matrix and flash on and off through our Kathara templates. So flashing on, expand, flashing off, contract, like that. Some texts would say God is breathing out and breathing in. It's sort of the same thing, but not really breathing, because God doesn't breathe. It's a expression, I guess, that to mean that God is expanding itself out and contracting back in. The combination of rays and sound tones work on different density levels to activate corresponding frequencies and centers in the Kathara template. Simple codes, for example, the Vecca codes, work as code inductions. When these are chanted and sung, they progressively start to activate the scalar waves in our field. That's why we have the Vecca codes. They're tonal sounds, so singing them brings more frequency into the body. More frequency in the body means balance and healing and rapid activations within your shield, and it all just starts to happen. So remember, we're not meant to get the Kathara template, healing information and freedom teachings, the CDT interpretations for another, 1,000 years or so, or maybe more. But we got them because of the crisis that we're facing right now, because Earth was meant to go into a pole shift, so we had to anchor the D12 energies very rapidly. And so thankfully we got this information earlier, sooner, which means that we actually need to activate faster, which brings a lot of uncomfortable symptoms, of course. And that's something you got to discern for yourself, is activating slowly is much better, much more useful to you than activating fast and having to live with all these uncomfortable symptoms. And there's no rush. I mean, there is a rush, but not really, because if the intention's there, then you're good. The intention is that you want to bioregenerate, so that intention is out there already, and that's the path that you will be taking, whether or not you actually catch up with the right frequency or not, which you will, but you have to have the right intention, in my opinion. So that's the main thing before anything technical comes in. The intention is the main thing. Each of the dimensional currents, the 15 dimensionalized currents, has a sound tone and has a base carrier of one of the three primal forces, so the Ire, the Mane, or the Manu. A lot of us are cut off from that D12 energy. A lot of false healers out there are actually running low currents and calling them God currents. For example, I'm not saying there's anything intentionally malicious about them. Maybe they're just ignorant about the fact that chi energy is just basically running D1, first dimensional energy, and prana's running D4, only D4. So D4 would heal 4, 3, 2, 1, but that's it. D12 would heal the whole template. And we need our templates to go back into balance, therefore we need to run the D12 energy. Now, when there's a discrepancy or a blockage, a disharmony in the body, the first thing the body will tell you is a physical manifestation. For example, if we have a physical condition, let's say we have a tired liver or a dysfunctional liver, the liver's connected to an emotion, and that's your D2 body. In your D2 body, that emotion is anger, because a lot of suppressed anger, and I'm not talking about the healthy anger that we express about a situation that's, you know, the righteous anger. I'm talking about the repressed anger. That anger is stored in the liver, and then it becomes a problem within the liver, a physical problem. Most people would run to the doctor for that. But we forget that we're part of this dimensionalized order, and we need to look at the energy ray and the underlying currents that run that frequency of D2 to fix it. So we have to go to D2 level to fix the emotion, which is always channeled. All emotions have to be redirected, not suppressed. And we need to look whether or not we have the energy current that runs it is a feminine, masculine, an ire or a mane, and take it back to the Kathara template. So I won't go into that too much because I feel like I need to make a whole podcast on this, linking, you know, that's my job is to help people understand the connection between emotion, physical body, and the energy currents that run it. So we won't go into that, but yeah, essentially we have to cross-check energy centers and where they're located with a physical organ in the body. So there's also plasma body activations and the Maharic shield. With combining those with the chanting of the Veka codes, you're essentially running high light, primal light, high sound, primal sound. The combination will help your body to regenerate all over instead of just working on one part. But people come to me for treating like a condition, and they just want to focus on that before they step into the whole bio-regensis of the whole template itself. And I'm still learning, by the way. I'm not like, you know, oh, I know it all, and you know, I'm also healing parts of my my makeup as well. But some people prefer to work on certain parts before they heal the whole Kathara template. So, but we need to have a background understanding and knowledge on how these things run, because if we don't understand it on an egoic and a mental level, we can't anchor it in the D3. So mind has to understand it first. So these a lot of Eastern religions and philosophies tell us, don't worry about the ego, bypass the ego, forget the ego, just go into spirituality. This is when the false ego or the superior ego begins to happen, is when we bypass something. The beauty about Keylontic science and freedom teachings is we're not bypassing anything. Are we accelerating? Yes, because of the situation on Earth, we are. But naturally, if we take it step by step, we don't bypass anything. We go through all the bodies, we go through all the rays, go through all the vibrations, sound vibrations, and we do things step by step, and we heal. So that's how it should be done. Okay, so we need to understand it on an egoic level and anchor it in the D3 mental body first before we start to think about the spiritual background of things. To further break down the various energy currents, we have, this is just getting too technical, but essentially protons, neutrons, and electrons run through the whole dimensionalized matrix, but they take on different names because they have different carriers of energies on different densities. So on density 1, for example, protons carry chi energy, and the electrons carry the chi energy, and the neutrons carry the ray, which is where they termed Reiki from. This is why we have Reiki, because Reiki works on density level 1, which is the base or the beginning, step 1, the second, third, and first as well. So if it's 3, then it works on 3, 2, 1. But it only works on the first density level. When we go to density 2, which is where we're evolving into, going into density 2, density 2 levels, we won't have neutrons, electrons, and protons. We have different carrier waves. We have prana, and the ionons carry the prana, and the dions carry the mana, and the myons carry the treya. Okay, so different particles. Different currents carry certain charges and types of particles, but they have different names. Essentially, they're carriers of energy. Now, density 3, we have the eons carry the mirror, and the electrons carry the maya, and the rayons carry the eon. So that's up to level 3, density 3, which is 7, 8, 9 dimension. Okay, so first density level has 3 dimensions. Second density level has 3 dimensions. Third has 3 dimensions, all the way up to 5, okay? So 5 density levels. Each density level has 3 dimensions. So we have 15 dimensions of consciousness all up that we exist as a part of. And we have part of our anatomy exists on each of those dimensionalized levels. The highest is the primal sound fields, the Kundalini. Then the next down is the Kirashe. So that's the primal light fields. We don't actually technically evolve into something new. Like, we don't become. We already are the 15 dimensions, but we activate the scalar grids within each dimension, and that gives us access to the next dimensional level and the experiences of that dimensional level. We term that as expanded consciousness because, we travel between dimensions, and that's known as interdimensional contact. So when we start contacting other beings on other dimensions, we think we've evolved to that. No, we just activated. When we start to see other beings, like in the etheric form and light beings, we actually become one as well. You can only perceive the lower dimensions. You can't perceive the higher ones than you. So this process of evolution is basically an activation process back to our original. So you're activating the fire letter sequences, and therefore you're holding high capacity of energy, which is the light and the sound within your template. Okay, so I'm going to give you a generic example of how the 2 different currents of energy come together. Suppose you have an imbalance, I don't know, let's just say a masculine imbalance, like your Manet energy is low, but your Ira is high, then your feminine energy is expressed more intensely through your body, through your movements, through your talking, excuse me, through your body shape as well. So now prana is carried by eons, which is dimensional level 4, and you need to work with that energy level next because we're going into dimension 4. So you need to heal your whole Kathara template and pay special attention to the heart energies, which is connected to dimension 4. Okay, so I've already mentioned this before, but I want to talk a little bit more about it. How do we do that? How do we activate? We do that through audible sound vibrations by vocalizing the names of these currents. For example, to balance the Manu energy, the Manu, you need to do 3, 6, 9, and 12 audible sound vibrations, which translate to Raya Treya Iyana Ma'a. So 3, 6, 9, 12 in your Kathara template. If you take a look at the Kathara 12 base grid, that forms the energy blueprint of all life in this time matrix. You see that there are 3 vertical lines up. We call them the 3 spirals of creation. We have a central one in the middle, and we have 2 outside, one on the right, one on the left. The left has 3 bases, the right has 3 bases, and the middle one has 6, and they're all interconnected, by the way. There's a left path, which is the 4, 7, 10, which has been corrupted, by the way, and there's a 3, 6, and 9 path, which is connected to the Amaria flame. We call it the Amaria path. This one carries the shield and is connected to energy flow in it that we need to take into the ascension earth. So all up, it's a 12 base Kathara point template, which at its highest level, it's connected to the universal chakra 14, and at its lowest, it's connected to the 13th chakra of earth. What have we been told? We were told that we're not connected to anything. We're just here, sinful children, doing all the wrong things, and we're here to redeem ourselves from the sins that we've made. We're here, we're made feel ashamed, guilt, and fear, subjugation, controlled. And you know why that is, so I won't go into that now. But the 3, 6, 9, 12 path is the path of Amaria. It's the Garadrome stargates of the Ark of the Covenant that's on the right side, and it corresponds to Earth, which is Stargate number 3, Sirius B 6, and Andromeda 9. And it's also the path of the Starfire activations that will begin in 2047. Until then, we need to make sure that we're fully anchoring the D12 energies, so we have sufficient codex in order to be able to go through these stargates. So Earth, not Earth, but Ascension Earth, because part of Earth is actually going into the Phantom Matrix. But parts of Earth that we call the Ascension Earth is going to be active and carry the codes that we need through the spanner gate, so we're able to go into Upper Earth and then go into the 369 passage, which will take us out of this energy matrix. So if anyone's trying to do all the activations all at once, let me tell you, that's impossible. That is absolutely not a good idea. It has to be a progressive, step-by-step journey, and it's exciting that way, because instead of just being hit by a big by something, a huge rock on your head where you just have no idea what's happening with you, you're actually unveiling things slowly and getting to experience and savor each and every moment in that particular unfoldment, if you like. So take time to activate, because we have a lot of potential. And as carriers of the human template and as indigos, we carry even more than the 12 DNA strands. We carry 24, some of us 36, all the way up to 48. So it's an exciting journey that demands patience and also humility. So knowing that we're not above or better than anyone, we just come a little farther than everybody who's still stuck on the lowest dimensions, but we need to give assistance to them. At the same time, we need to look after ourselves as well, so we get that right balance and we're good. And like I said, intention is everything. To me, intention overrides action, because you may not act on it, but if your intention is thus, then this is how your life will play out. as long as, one thing is a requirement here, as long as we don't get sucked into the false ascension mechanics through the New Age teachings, which is something I want to talk about actually in another podcast because I have a lot to say about this. So, yeah, anyway, I'm tempted to say things, but I won't. So, if your shield is out of balance, what happens is your body shuts down. And when your body is ready to balance the energies and shield, once again, that's when your body will open up to that potential. Now, when your body shuts down, though, that's when we become physically ill. So notice if you're having illnesses, dis-ease or disease in your body, it may be because you're resisting energy upgrades or you're taking on too many. There's some imbalance here behind it in the energy currents. More likely that you will be blocked in some parts, and therefore you need to start doing the Kathara techniques to activate. Slowly, no rush. So, and I just remembered something that I was taught a long time ago in Eastern philosophy, that when you run out of prana, you actually die, your body dies. So you have as much life as you have prana. In a way, it is true. It holds a lot of truth, because if you become imbalanced to the point where the energy that holds your system and runs through your Kathara points becomes severely blocked or unable to flow, it's not just going to sit there and build up, it's going to implode, which means your heart will stop, or your brain, or you go through cellular death. And that's why they say the yogis have a long life, because they know how to work prana and get the balance correct. And so the first thing about healing, and the most important principle in healing and on your healing journey, is to sort out the imbalances. Now, there's a lot of ways to do that, which I won't go through, but one way is to talk to your body. And some people find that funny. Talking to my body, but why not? If you can talk to other people, you can talk to you, because what you're doing is establishing a connection with your intuitive faculties. So learning how to connect with your body will talk back to you because it's got consciousness, and now you'll understand that the triad is already existing within each and every Partiki units in your body, let alone your cells and your atoms, and on a physical level. So something I do actually is teach people how to connect to their bodies. I do something called genome healing. When I'm healing other people, I empower them and guide them to talk to their own bodies and become the voice for their organs. So if they're concerned about the liver, they can become the voice of the liver and start expressing the voice of the liver in words so that we can address that. And people first say to me, oh, no, I'm not connected. I don't think my liver will say anything. But then when I actually take them through the process, so much comes out that it shocks them. Like, oh, where did this come from? I didn't know that. Wow. So yeah, really good, really good. So that's my advice, is to begin there. Learning how to connect with your body. We can gauge from that if there's disharmony, and also physical signs of dis-ease and disease, which are clear manifestations of disharmony in the body. Now, I want to mention here that stress is the main cause of disease, and I'm not making this up. Also, the scientific community would agree with that too, that stress is the number one cause of disease, because stress is telling us that something's out of balance, something's out of whack, that needs to be acknowledged and needs to be brought into harmony. It's like a bad relationship. The only reason it's bad is because the two are in disharmony, whether they're mentally disharmonious or physically or emotionally. So there needs to be a affinity between the two bodies to a certain extent. Like, we're not going to get along with someone else 100%, but there needs to be the minimal standards, and then the two need to work together on what's left to bring into harmony, because that demands greater awareness of what's happening within us. And there we go back to what I said before, is learn to talk to your body so you can work out and figure out what needs to be done. So stress is the main cause of mortality. It's the main cause of disease. And if you're stressed out, it's something in your environment. So you have to thank the stress. I'm grateful for the stress because it's telling me something in my environment has to change, and we need to start making those changes step by step. And preferably address them instantaneously, because stress gives you only so much lifeline before it takes over your whole system. What I mentioned today about healing and that sort of thing is mentioned in the Dance for Joy and Dance for Life workshops by Ashayana Dean. A lot of it points I've made in this podcast, by the way, and all my podcasts in general are a fusion of my own observations and philosophies and what I've come to learn on a personal level, and also from the freedom teachings. So please use discernment before accepting anything that I've said, and do your own research. Now, back to the audible sounds. They're what I see them as strings of tones. So they're strings of tones incorporated into our biology in order to empower us. So when we feel disempowered, it's because we don't have that knowledge. So good to go back and study this and start learning. And it's a very exciting process when we begin to learn, because every time you learn something new, you're activating. It's not just learning through the mind, because your spiritual body is also involved. You're taking on a new frequency. If it's good knowledge, then you're upgrading. If it's bad knowledge or bad bits of information, then you're downgrading. But essentially something is changing within your energy field as well as your mental body. There's something called the radial body. The radial body separates density levels. When we hit a certain point of frequency, if we're not well adjusted to that frequency, we're not able to go through it. This is why we hit a certain point and we just feel like we're stuck on it, because the radial body seals have to be open as well. And this is all provided to us as techniques in the freedom teachings. Okay, now I'm sure many of you would have felt at a certain point, or maybe feeling now, a sense of loneliness and separation. You need to understand that, well, mentally first, is that there is no such thing as separation. That separation from God is an illusion. If we understand it well, we'll understand that our separation from God is actually just something perceived from where we stand here. We can create for ourselves within an individuated manifestation a life that always connects us with that eternal life force. So when we understand the mechanics of manifestation, we actually create just as God would create, except God holds a greater ability, capacity to create. But we can create our own life. We can write our own life path. We're in this time matrix, in this energetic matrix. So free will is honored, and we are given a great level of creative abilities. And the more we become activated, the greater this ability. But we forget that we're a part of this omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient God who is existing within us at all times. We have to find a way back to God, not externally, but internally. We forget that we have that ability to manifest as well. And in higher density levels, we actually take the mental sheath with us. We master, hopefully, the ability before we go into the dimension 4. So essentially what that means is everything that we think is manifested instantaneously. That's why we are taught in Eastern philosophies like, meditation and Buddhism and Hinduism and yoga, that we need to pay attention to what the mind is doing, where we're investing our energy as far as thoughts are concerned. Because what we think, we become. So the mind can be your best friend, but it can also be your worst enemy. That's from the Bhagavad Gita. So we need to be careful about the things we think about obsessively, okay? Because they create certain patterns which become energetic codes. And these codes actually become a reality of some sort. Something, in my opinion, has to be done before we try and leap into the spirit world and try and decipher the creative mechanics of God and how we come here and why and when, is to learn how to channel the mind's energy to work for us so we can make the mind our best friend. Also, where our attention goes, that's where energy flows. If the mind's always, say, fixated on someone or something, if it's work, then we're obsessing about work, then what we're doing is we're lending that energy into the unconscious mind. We're going into the unconscious because work, we generally do the same thing over and over, so we become unconscious of our creative abilities, and you're not really getting a chance to use your creative energy. It becomes suppressed. So that's something to be very mindful of when it comes to harmonizing those currents of energy within you. Now, coming back to that Manu flame, like I said, I want to explain a little bit about the Manu, Mane, and Ire. The Manu flame, the eternal, the void, is the Holy Spirit energy, which is actually the Amaria flame, which means the eternal flame of divine love. Beautiful name, absolutely beautiful. I've always liked the name Amaria. My spiritual name is Aluria. So anyway, that flame is flame of God, and we are God, therefore we are love. It comprises the two other flames, which are the Mane and the Ire. These are units of particles or subparticles, also carry the love energy. It's the love energy that makes everything manifest into creation. It's God wanting to know itself, because of that, the root of that is unconditional love to know himself. For us, it's wanting to share truth and be out there and connect with other people that same truth, because of that underlying unconditional love that we hold within our template, that we forget we are or we have. So when we're sharing truths and knowledge and getting excited and joyful about this knowledge, it's because we are remembering who we are, and we are love. We are an extension of the Amaria flame. There is no way to escape God. We are in God. We are in that conscious matrix. It's called matrix because it has an order. That proves that we're not here by chance, because chance could not create something so perfectly balanced. And each of you and each of us has a piece of ourselves in all 5 density levels. So this is how these things work in terms of not so much chronologically, not like God favored this, so created this first and this created that. because in the higher levels there's no time. Time's perceived only here in matter form. All happened at once, but just to simplify it for the mind to understand it, first thing born out of God is density 5 level currents, which is a primal sound field, and then consciousness would then manifest into so that was a vibration. Vibration was first, which you call the divine feminine principle, and then the light formed, and that's pre-matter, became dimensionalized, and so the hydroplasmic liquid light then becomes gaseous state, begins to cool, and then forms liquid matter, and that's where the 12D pre-matter liquid light, which is a silver light, pale silver, that's the ray we use for healing, because God consciousness stepping down through those different rays of frequency and vibration comes down to 12D, and it becomes pre-matter liquid light of a silver currency. So that's the currency we use for healing, the template, and it's the frequency needed to restore our Christos divine blueprint, which is the same blueprint for everyone who holds a potential, 12D potential, and everything else in manifestation, except the entities that have cut off from 12D, who only hold up to 11.5 and reversal. And because of them, the geneticists, the dark agents, who tried to separate from God, creating their own energy matrix, they actually mutated their own original genetics. So we don't call them imperfections as such, because that implies that God made mistakes. God gave us free will, and we manifested through that system or that order, and we made our own choices. Their choice is to disconnect from God consciousness, and so they needed something else to back them up, and they created their own, which is failing them, because it goes only can run for so long before it just implodes and goes back to space dust. Now below 12D, so 12D is the non-polarized state or dimension. Below 12 is where everything becomes polarized. So more this or more that. And we actually exist within all these levels all at once. So you already have a level of you in the, as an ascended master or as a full Christos avatar body. You already have that there. It's in potentiation because you haven't activated the scalar waves yet to embody that anatomy of yours, but it's just, you start from the bottom because we step down in consciousness and we activate. As we activate, we start to realize our different anatomies, and we expand more and more into the greater self, okay, or greater awareness of the self. In the lower densities and dimensions, things appear very different to how they appear in higher density, higher dimensions, like stars, planets, and flying objects and things like that. They're actually celestial bodies that exist in their own dimensional field. They can perceive us, but we perceive them as something else. We may perceive them as round when they're actually not round, and that sort of thing. So as we oscillate and raise our frequencies, we become more expanded and we start to see things clearly. That's why sometimes there's references in like Hinduism and the yogic system that all is an illusion, all is Maya, illusion. It's because of that limit on our scalar waves that's not allowing us to see things for what they really are. And that's because from this density level, from where we're standing, and this level of perception, I'll give you an allegory, for example. There is this story about a man who mistaken a snake to a rope, and he developed intense fear from the rope, not knowing that it's a rope, not knowing that it's not a snake but a rope. So he thought it was a snake, and he developed this intense fear that stayed with him for a very, very long time and prevented him from pursuing a certain path that would have been good for him. So he was in a dilemma. Do I keep going and ignore the snake, or do I stay here? And he decided to stay back because he was too scared of walking near the snake and crossing over to the other side. So that fear took over him, and it started to intensify with him, that it blocked him doing a lot of things that he wanted to do. But then a wise man came and laughed and said, you're mistaken. You're not seeing things for what they really are. It's actually a rope, and it's not a snake. And that's when this man laughed and realized that sometimes we judge things by face value, but actually, and we get the emotions worked up and, become so entangled in the situation, and reality becomes contaminated and really limited for us. Our choices become limited because there is a level of fear that we develop because we didn't see things the way they are in actual fact, but we've seen it from an emotional or a level of disempowered, in a disempowered way. So the same thing applies to us in everything that we do. We have a limited understanding of the things around us, of the objects, and not until we develop a clearer perception and a broader idea of who we are and how things are comprised, then everything starts to make sense. And so void comes first. Void makes a movement, becomes an energy signature, gives birth to two consciousness units, Partiki and Particum, which are the magi and the ire, sound and vibration. It's all spontaneous manifestation. Now, what does this remind you of, this model of creation, of the splitting of the two units? What does it remind you of? Into feminine and masculine. To me, instantly reminded me, when I heard it first, it reminded me of the story of Adam and Eve. Abrahamic religions depict Adam and Eve as the first man and woman, right? So here we have that similarity. It was the first. And, first was the word, which is, the sound field. So depicting man and woman as fallen ones, and depicting Eve as born out of Adam's rib. And why was she born out of his rib? To be his companion. Because Adam, the light, couldn't do it alone. He needed the vibration. But the order of things is different. So we know that the order of things is sound was first. They created of course they had to put Adam, and Eve comes out of Adam, which is completely misconstrued. And later Adam and Eve we're told that they sinned, and they were banished from the Garden of Eden. And so these stories, actually, they're not myths. They're mentioned in the book of Genesis, and they convey that a sin, the original sin being Adam and Eve who were sinned, is the reason why humanity descended into chaotic times. We're also told that God is a vengeful and a wrathful God, and he cursed them. Adam is, to me, represents the divine masculine, and that's the magi, and Eve, to me, is the divine feminine and represents the ire. So that's an interesting one there. And then there is a reference in the Bible in John verse 1.1. It says first came the word. Now, I'm not religious or Christian. I haven't read the Bible fully, but I know these. And as Ash would say also, that religions hold some truth because they're actually birthed out of the Mahabharata texts. think about what was said in this verse, you realize that the Bible is actually trying to tell us, convey a meaning. The deeper meaning is now something that we understand. So word came first, or first was the word. In essence, it's saying that pre-sound or sound was first. Manu, the void, wanted to express itself, so it created a movement. This movement became the vibration, which is a sound that then created the oscillation, which was the light, and primal light and primal sound, and then became created the Kathara template, which was the basis of manifestation for all life forms. So the energy code that was created from sound became expanded, and outflowing rays of light manifested at different levels within the Kundarai and the Kirashe first. And that's the story of Adam and Eve. So as you can see, the gnosis is everywhere around us. We've been conditioned to think that we're separate. The story of Adam and Eve is clearly proving that before the Christian movement, before the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, there was some truth to religious texts. So I'm not against religion or anything like that. I'm just against twisting agendas that clearly are deceptive and untrue, promoting it as truth, and that's just to subjugate and control. And so, yeah, I have a problem with untruth, and, obviously I'm not in a position to eliminate that, but I hold my own truth and I share from a place of goodwill and a place of purity and a place of unity consciousness, and that's my intention here. So, yeah, and the other thing is, what really angers me is when the Christianity teaches and preaches about sin, and then tells people that they're born out of sin and someone's coming to save them, and that is Jesus. It keeps pushing this savior agenda. And then we have the Q movement, and we have, Trump's going to save us, and I won't go into that, but, that's all part of the savior programming. It's actually becoming really boring because, you hear it over and over again, but then, hello, no one's here. So, oh, okay, we're meant to save ourselves. Right, okay. So this is all to keep us polarized, polarized into the false masculine and false feminine agendas as well. So to pick a side, the feminist movement is about picking a side, being angry at the masculine. And then we have the patriarchy, the masculine, controlling the feminine. And there's these wars, the gynocracy and the patriarchal systems that have been in existence for thousands of years, controlling women. There's no need for that if we really understand who we are. There's no need for that. We actually are both, each one of us, irrespective of our gender. So it's very clear out there what's happening. If you look at the dynamics between the feminine and the masculine, these two forces are one and the same. They're born out from the void, from the Manu. But if you look at the dynamics between them in terms of the gender playing out on this density level, you can see there's a form of escapism from both sides. Both sides are not leaning into the center point of fusion, the center point that brings them together, because there's something in the dynamic, in the relationship, that tends to be missing, and that's disempowerment. That's because we've been disempowered for so long. The two genders, the two genders are actually not acknowledging, or maybe they're just unaware, about the fact that what unifies them is a void, the Manu, and they ought to come together into that space of unified oneness and put their egos aside. But people are not willing to open their hearts up to one another, and not opening the hearts up to one another, they're missing out on that sacred transmission that comes through the Manu. So I can just say a short personal example here from my own experiences is when I started to open my heart up to my twin flame, who I'm married to now. I mean, we have ups and downs and we're always learning, but I feel like we're always expanding, we're always learning, expanding. And it's never a devolving path, it's always expanding us. We pick up on each other's thoughts and telepathy and all that, that's all happening. But then there are times when I choose to just go on my own and do my own things, and he still picks up on it. He still knows what I'm doing. It's really funny. Because he's like, have you been doing this? Because I can sense it. And he can pick up on my thoughts. Just as I'm about to say it, he'll say, is that what you want to say? It's like really funny. It's like there's no escape. That's because we both dip into that void, into that manu. And this is where we meet. This is actually where we meet. This is the sacred place that we meet, not in me, not in him, but in that triad. That's the sacred marriage. That's essential for the feminine and masculine to come together, is to have and to acknowledge that there's that the Manu, it's God who is basically filtering down and making itself available energetically to the two of us, because we're all three form a triad and we're not separate. So in terms of relationship, on the level that we perceive relationships, going into the next density level, it demands we understand ourselves and the opposite, who I don't like calling opposite, but in this case it is, in terms of, you know, the Partikam and Partiki, and the manifestation of the two different currencies. So when we use opposite, it means like we instantly think, oh, there's a war going on, but it doesn't have to be like this. So we complete each other, we don't compete with each other. That's basically what I'm trying to say. It's something so sacred that the two coming together, the electric and magnetic force, there is an attraction and not a repulsion. And them coming together, opening themselves up at the heart level, creates that perfect harmony and balance between the two. But without the triad, the third, God consciousness, the relationship is limited, because you're not dipping into that eternal life force. You're keeping that separate. So what happens is your egos are dominating the relationship. Okay, so we cut off from the perpetual flow, the sacred and the higher. And so from this alone, in comparing what I've said with the Maharata texts, which by the way are in interpretations of the sacred holographic discs, the CDT plates, which is a word to mean cloister Dora Terra plates. You can see now that how Abrahamic religions have, not just Abrahamic religions, but all the way back to Atlantis and before that, 200,000 years ago, you know, even the electric wars and that, I don't know, 500 million years or whatever. It's so old, this drama. So you can see that things have been twisted and turned around and inverted, and there is a big difference of what the Maharata text is teaching us and what we are being programmed to believe here on this in this school here on earth. So the male-female analogy is an indication that someone at some point knew how the universe works and decided that they were going to give us a twisted version of that, of the female and the male. So be interesting, you know, take a look at make some comparisons and start to write them down, because you can see when the drama really began. I personally feel like in our modern era, a modern time, it all started with these priests, the dark priests that got together. They call it the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. But like I said, drama goes way, way, way back. So you can see Now, there's a clear, intentional effort to cause harm, take us away from the truth that we are. Knowing ourselves that we are love and we are God. So what do you think? Leave a comment in below. Tell everyone and tell me what you think, and yeah, let's make this an interactive chat. And I hope this podcast was in some way helpful, shedding light on this important topic and where we come from. So until next time, take care and much love. Please like, share, subscribe, and share this podcast with anyone you think might be interested and benefit. Much love. Bye.